Hello everyone and welcome to this week's behind the scenes devlog video, and this week I'm probably just going to be working on sheep again. I've still got a bit more to do with their AI, and I also need to implement a few more things into the feeding and food components. So it's probably just going to be sheep and grass again for this week, but after this week things are definitely going to start speeding up, because once I've got this AI system finished and the eating components finished, then it will be a lot quicker for me to add in new species. Just having a quick look at the terrain generation code now, because a few people now have mentioned that they think the world might be a little bit too mountainous. This is what it usually looks like. So I've just been playing around with the parameters for the generation and just trying out a few different terrain shapes. Next up, I've just made a very slight improvement to the movement of the sheep, and that is that when they stop, they no longer stop instantly, but instead they slide a little bit. And obviously I've exaggerated it here so that you can see it. But in general, it just makes it look a little bit more natural. Just made a quick alteration to the bouncing calculation for the sheep, and I think that the bouncing now looks a little bit more natural, and basically I just changed it from this to this. This afternoon I've been redoing quite a lot of the code for the component-based architecture, and the reason for this is that I was just adding a couple of new traits into the game for the sheep, and I realised that every time that I add a trait into the game, I also had to add quite a lot of code to go with it. Code to save the trait, to load the trait, to modify, display, and reproduce the trait. And it's always pretty much the same sort of code. So I decided that it would probably be best if I made the traits a more integral part of the component-based architecture, so that I don't have to add this same code every time that I add a new trait. So that's what I've been doing all afternoon. I'm just about to stop now because I'm going to meet one of my old housemates from England. He's in Berlin at the moment, so I'm going to meet him at a rooftop bar, which will be nice. But I'm going to have to continue on with this tomorrow because I've still got quite a bit of code to redo in the various components.
Just dropping into the sea.
So it is now 8:30 on Thursday morning, and I've finally finished redoing all of the component-based architecture stuff. I started off by just integrating the trait stuff into the component-based architecture, but then I thought, while I'm here, I might as well just redo everything else that I'm unhappy with. So I changed the whole component-based architecture system, which meant I obviously had to change all of the various components that I've already created. So it took a little while, but I'm now pretty happy with the system that I've ended up with. So the main benefit of this new system is that it's much easier to add new traits to entities, because previously when I wanted to add a trait I had to add various bits of code in various different classes, but now I simply have to add one line. I just have to add a trait blueprint, which takes in some information about the trait, such as the name of the trait and the natural value of the trait, and then everything else is handled automatically. So the displaying of the trait here, the modifying of the trait, this all happens without me having to add any more code. When the sheep reproduces, the trait gets passed on, that's all done automatically, and also when I save the game, the trait gets saved automatically, and when I load the game, it gets loaded correctly as well. So I've now added a bounce power and speed trait to the sheep, so you can now selectively breed sheep that are faster or that bounce higher. And I'm now going to work on finally making these entity pop-up GUIs not move, because it is rather annoying, especially when you're trying to click these buttons here and the sheep's moving around. It's very difficult, so I'm going to make sure that they don't move anymore. Just stopping for a bit of lunch now, and I've been trying out one way of keeping the entity pop-up still, and that is that when it opens it just stays in the exact same spot on the screen, no matter where the sheep goes and no matter how you rotate or move the camera. Which is good, and it works, and obviously it's much easier to interact with now, but it does mean that it's no longer really attached to the sheep, which is a bit of a disadvantage. So all afternoon today I've been working on the sheep's AI, and I've been trying to make it a little bit more random so that they don't just run around in circles like they did before. So that's all looking a bit nicer now, and I've also made it so that they no longer just plunge into the water. You can see that when they reach the water they actually turn around now, instead of just running straight into it. I've just been trying out another way of keeping the entity pop-ups still on the screen, and that is that instead of clamping them to a certain position on the screen, I'm now anchoring them at a certain point in the 3D world. And for the sheep, that's the position that the sheep was in when the pop-up was opened. So you can see that that's all working now. It keeps the pop-up kind of close to where the sheep is, and I've also made sure that this can't go off the screen, so you can see that when the pop-up reaches the edge of the screen, it just stops so that it can't go off the screen. To finish off the day, I've just been doing some more work on the baby sheep AI, so now when it's near enough to the parent, you can see that it has a look around and it bounces around the nearby area, but when the parent sheep gets far enough away, then it will chase after the parent to be close to it again. So you can see that here with two sheep, so they play around and look around for a bit, but when the parent gets far enough away, they chase after it so that they can be close to it again. Good morning everyone, it is a lovely sunny Friday morning. I'm just having some breakfast and then I'm going to get started for today. And today I'm mostly going to be working on eating. So this morning I've been working on the eating component, which is something that I started off implementing last week, but I didn't get very far. So now in the entity pop-up GUIs, you can see that the sheep have a hunger bar, and when this drops below a certain value, the sheep will go looking for some food. And also in the species information GUI, you can see that it now shows you what this species eats. It is 3:30 in the afternoon now. I've just made myself a cinnamon fruit pancake thing, which is quite appropriate because I'm just starting work on a food component. So I've pretty much finished the food component now, and this allows me to specify how filling certain foods are. So you can see that the grass has 20 food points, and this is the amount of hunger that the sheep will gain when it eats the grass. So you can see here this sheep is getting a little bit hungry, but when it eats the grass, its hunger bar fills up by 20 points. Just implemented a super simple animation for when the sheep eat, and you can see this sheep here doing it now. So this evening I've been working on classifying food, and I've created a hierarchical classification structure, something like this, in the code, and this means that I no longer have to specify every single species that an animal can eat. Instead, I can specify a classification. So for example, for the sheep, I could say that they eat plants, and that will now include all of the trees, all of the bushes, and all of the small plants like grass and flowers. Or I could just say that they eat small plants, and that means that they can eat grass, flowers, and anything else that I classify as a small plant. So in the game now, if you have a look at the species information GUI for the sheep, you can see that it now just says that it eats small plants, and that includes anything like grass, flowers, anything else that I classify as a small plant. It is 10 now, and I've just added a pop-up for the hunger bar to show you exactly how much hunger the sheep has. And talking of hunger, I'm going to do some cooking now because I've got some people coming around tomorrow evening, and I want to try and make some honeycomb chocolate snacks. It's almost midnight now, and I've just finished my first attempt at creating honeycomb, and it didn't go too badly. It's a bit thin and compact, but there's definitely some honeycomb action going on in there, and it tastes good, so that's the main thing. But I'm going to finish for today and get to bed so that I can get up early and get lots done tomorrow. It is 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and today is going to be a very busy day. I've got lots to do. Firstly, I've got a small list of things that I want to finish off with the sheep and the grass. I also want to cover this honeycomb in chocolate because that will be delicious, and I also need to edit this behind the scenes devlog video, which I have actually pretty much done already this morning. I've just got a bit more to do with that, so loads to do today. So far this morning I've finished editing this week's behind the scenes devlog video. I've also made a couple of little tiny changes to the sheep's AI, and I've just finished implementing a feature which allows you to drag the entity pop-up GUI around on the screen. It is getting late in the afternoon now, and I've just been making my way through this list, adding in a few final things for the sheep this week. So, for example, I've now made it so that the sheep's hunger affects the sheep's health, so if the sheep gets really hungry and starves, it will actually die. Also, I've made it so that very old and very unhealthy sheep now move around a lot slower and don't bounce as much, just to make them look a little bit more unhealthy. But apart from that, I'm probably not going to do any more programming this week, but I do need to do a bit of cooking and add the chocolate to my honeycomb. So that is going to be it for this week, and I think that the sheep and the grass are now pretty much finished. There were just a couple of little things that I didn't quite get done yet, such as a death animation, but I can add that in after I've added in a few more species. So next week I'm going to be moving on to trees, and that should be really quick to add in. There's really nothing new that I need to create there, so adding in trees should only take about a day. And then after that I'm going to be working on fruit trees and fruit bushes, which will take a little bit longer because of the fruit generation, which is something that I haven't really worked on yet, so that will probably take the rest of next week. But then after next week, things should really start to speed up,
and I should be able to start adding in new species pretty much every day or every 2 days. So by the end of September, I'm hoping to have a pretty decent amount of content in the game, and it should be starting to look like a finished product. And then all through October, I'm going to continue adding in content, and by the end of October, I'm hoping that I should have pretty much all of the content in the game, and Equilinox will basically be finished at that point, and then it will just be a case of optimizing and bug fixing and tweaking and balancing, and quite a lot of marketing as well, before I can actually release the game. So that's all to look forward to in the next few months. But for this week, that is going to be it. So thank you guys very much, as always, for watching this video. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you all next time.